Bear with me just a moment. So you're here this morning to hear about street outreach. And before you do that, I want to put that into the larger context of pillars for you. Our mission and your mission, because we think of you all as part of our team, is to provide shelter, support, and solutions to address the housing needs in our community. We really look to be innovative and effective in keeping experiences of homelessness rare and brief. That's our vision. That when it happens, it doesn't last long, and it only happens once for an individual. And we do so guided by the values that you see at the bottom of the screen. This Pillars at a Glance shows the sweep of what we do. Most of you will be aware that Pillars was formed in 2018 through the merger of 3 housing organizations, the Homeless Connections, the Emergency Shelter, the Fox Valley Warming Shelter, and Housing Partnership of the Fox Cities. And what that merger did was to allow us to serve clients more effectively. That's really what we were after in bringing those 3 organizations together under one umbrella. And what that created was this continuum of services that you see on the screen, which is pretty far-reaching and which allows us to serve clients better. The slice of our work that we're going to be talking about this morning is street outreach. And this is a program that I'm not going to talk about. I'm going to let our street outreach team do that. So as I pass the floor to Betsy Barnes, our Pillars Resource Center manager, I'm going to ask you as you enter to continue in the chat, if you care to, share who you are and why you're here. So Betsy, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and I'm going to let you take it away.
All right, thanks. Great job, Lisa. Hi, everyone. I'm Betsy Barnes. I am the Resource Center manager, and I oversee the outreach team. The Resource Center is connected to St. Matthew's Church on 129 South Mason Street, and we are a service that's open during the day for people to come in for services, use the computers, sign up for shelter, work with our AODA coach, all sorts of things. And one of those things is our outreach team works out of that, the Resource Center. And so I'd like to say they definitely have the hardest job in so many ways, working with the hardest to serve population. A little bit about me. Before I was in this role, I've been in this role about 16 months. I ran a project called Project Rush. Perhaps some of you remember that. It was research to understand and solve homelessness. And one of the things that committee did, that Project Rush did, was create this resource center, create a place for people to go during the day for services. And while I was researching that, I interviewed people struggling with homelessness. Well, what kind of services would you need? Where would you want to go during the day? What could we provide? Things like that. And I spent weeks on this project doing this, and it had such an impact. And I tell this story often, so you maybe have heard it, forgive me, but I tell it often because I think about it often because it had such a profound impact, and it really touches on who we're serving and who outreach serves. So as I interviewed people who were struggling with homelessness, what kind of services would be the best for you? How can we reach you? How can we really help you take that next step? I went to places like the library or the transit center, downtown, city center, where people congregated most to find folks. And one person, and I'm going to call him Bill, I saw him well over 10 times. And every time I saw him, he said, "You again, don't even open that. That's not going to work. Don't do that. We don't need a resource center. That's not something I'm coming to, and it's not going to work." And well, talk to me about this. Why isn't it going to work? And how can we make it work? And how can we help? Like what can we do? And it was several times he just walked away. He didn't want to talk to me. And finally he sat down. We got a cup of coffee. We sat on a bench and we talked for quite a while. And after a bit, he finally said, "Betsy, you're just not hearing me. And so let me just be clear with you. I know how to be homeless. I know how to survive. I know where to get food. I know where to sleep. And I can do that. And I can do that every day. But what I can't do, and what you're not understanding, is I can't try to get out of this situation and fail again. Because if I do that, that will kill me. That will kill me. So I just need to just do what I'm doing because I can get through each day." And so that's who we're working with. So not only do we need to find services and unique ways to help people, we as an outreach team, and particularly Emily and Ben, who you'll hear from next, need to find a way to convince people that they're worth it and that we're here to help them take those steps and that we're not going to let them fall. And that's a hard thing. So we can have all the services in the world, but if people don't want to engage, they're not working, right? So that's what Ben and Emily's job is to help people to want to engage. So they're going to talk a little bit about their day-to-day, and I think Emily Peterson is going to go first. So Emily, but I will be here throughout the conversation and afterwards if you have any questions, but I'm going to let Emily take that away.
Hi, everyone. My name is Emily Peterson. I'm the Street Outreach Coordinator with Pillars. I'm going to try to share my screen slides. And I graduated from Arizona State University in 2019 with a degree in Community Advocacy and Social Policy. Oh, sorry, wrong button. And what Ben and I do is, as a street outreach team, we go out into the community and we find people who are struggling with homelessness, like Betsy said, and we connect them to services. So this is a little bit about that. I'm going to let Ben introduce himself as well, whenever he's ready. If he unmutes himself. All right, there we go.
Let me try that again. Good morning to you all. My name is Ben Rankel. I'm currently the Past Street Outreach Case Manager for Pillars. I currently work out of the Resource Center. I'm deeply proud and fortunate to be part of our dedicated and caring street outreach team. I started working for the Fox Valley Warming Shelter as an intern back in September of 2014, and I've been with the organization since. I've been in my current role since August of last year. I graduated from UW Oshkosh in 2015. Better late than never, right? With a bachelor's degree in social work. I started my work in the service field, working with adults and teenagers living with special needs through Agape of Appleton. And from that point, took a deeper interest in working and advocating for populations that are underserved and ignored.
All right, so that is our outreach team. Between the three of us, we go out into the community every day, sometimes really early morning, sometimes later at night, and we find people who are unsheltered. So that brings me to, if I can't make the slides go.
Emily, in the lower left, you probably will see really, really faint arrows that you can click right or left. You see them on your screen?
I do not. Sorry, let me make this work. All right. Well, that worked. Oh, there we go. Okay. So who do we serve? The Pillars Outreach Team, we serve the people that the Department of Housing and Urban Development describe that are living in places not meant for human habitation. This loosely correlates to people who are living on the street who are unsheltered, not living in shelter, not living in a home, in places that you might see above. These are two very makeshift shelters that we see often in places like the woods behind the old Kmart, next to the College Avenue Viaduct, just in places that you wouldn't probably think that people would be living, but they are. They are the people that you most think of when community members talk about homelessness. They often struggle with mental illness, addiction issues. There are many reasons why they're not in shelter. They can live in places like cars, vans, to more temporary places, like we talked about, under bridges, in parking ramps. They also, like we talked about, they struggle with mental illness and addiction, and they're often struggling with both, called dual diagnosis, or co-occurring disorders. They're always trauma survivors, and their time in life on the street only adds to this trauma, which opens the doors to, more distrust. We work diligently in order to be able to get them to trust us and help them become more feeling like they're worth it to serve. Sometimes they have had traumatic experiences in places like shelter and in healthcare settings. So this only deters them from accessing services from Pillars, because they have a lot of distrust in who we are and what we do, and they haven't had someone help them before, so why would someone help them now? All right, what do? We literally meet them where they're at. So that means that we go to them. We are often under bridges, in wooded areas, parking lots, and other places that people are living. We offer services that range from basic needs such as food, water, hygiene items, to case management, referrals to services, shelter being a big one. It takes several contacts for us to gain their trust, and that only increases the need for our consistency on our end, to make sure that they know that we are going to be reliable and consistent with them. Once this trust is established, though, there's greater potential for therapeutic relationships between us to flourish, and everything we do as an outreach team is based in trauma-informed care to help them overcome their traumatic pasts, both their life on the street, their life before the street, everything that led to their homelessness episode, in order to better serve them and help them in the best way that we can. All right, so now we're going to watch a short video that Lisa is going to provide. This is a short video just about what we do on a day-to-day basis. I think it's about a minute long, maybe a little less. It just kind of shows what we do in the community.
Are you all hearing the audio? Give me a thumbs up, Emily, if you're hearing it. Hold, please. I think I missed a click along the way. Give me 1 second. Oh, this is going to be better. Back that up. And here we go. Somebody say audibly, yes, I hear it.
Yes, I hear it.
Back to you, Emily.
All right, thank you, Lisa. So that was just a short video about, our day-to-day. You saw the yellow vests. We wear the yellow vests so that our clients can identify us, to come up to us, talk to us about what they need, referrals to services, stuff like that. I'm going to let Ben take it over as soon as this works, as soon as it happens, and talk about a little bit about what he does when it comes to his case management program. There we go. All right, Ben. He's muted again, and he's going to unmute.
Well, thanks, Emily. So I am a case manager, and I specifically am funded for the Projects for Assistance in Transition from Homelessness, and this is a federal block grant. My program's unique because I specifically work with people with Category 1 homelessness and severe and persistent mental health. As it happens, this is a substantial portion of our clientele. Or just,
Hey, Ben,
yeah.
Can I ask you to define Category 1 homelessness for us?
Category 1 homelessness are people living outside, on the street, in vehicles, in shelters, and people living in houses without and shelters without any running water. So if you're living in a house without any running water, you are considered Category 1 homeless.
Thank you.
Yeah. Like I said, as it happens, this is a substantial portion of the clients we work with. As Emily said, our clients are in and out of shelter due to mental health and addiction struggles they live with. Many of my clients also live with cognitive delays that make connection to services on their own especially difficult. County services have often deemed these people competent when they cannot navigate the basic skills needed to live on their own. I work with clients who have had very negative experiences working with healthcare systems, other systems as well, so it can be hard to restore their trust in systems there to help them. I'm going to tell you a little bit about the services that I offer. The majority of the connections I'm making for people are to medical services, mental health treatment, AODA assessment, housing referrals, clothing vouchers, and fuel assistance. I do provide first-time rent and security deposit assistance to my clients should they find housing on their own as well. In my role, I facilitate connection and referral of my clients to services that I already elaborated on. I find that one of my primary roles, though, is encouraging clients to remain persistent and stay connected to services once that initial connection was made. In my years working in this field, I've found it's important to give the people I'm working with a reason to come back to my office and keep coming back. It's one thing to make connections out in the street. It's quite another to get them started on a path to bettering their lives. This starts with building a positive rapport and showing often very traumatized people that there is someone who will care and someone who will walk with them through the trials that they're going through at the present time. Like Emily mentioned, meet people where they're at, and you try to walk with them to a better place. I have found that this is the most important aspect in maintaining bonds with clients. My clients' case plans are self-directed and specific to that particular client, and they do as much work on their plan independently to the best of their ability. Of course, some clients have a harder time doing this. It's very important to accentuate the positives and use affirmations. Celebrating even the smallest accomplishment is tremendously important to keep morale up. to keep the client motivated, and most importantly, to cultivate the client's belief in their own ability to get through their crisis. This is sorely needed as our clients face many challenges to navigate outside of their own personal challenges. Elaborate on some of those. Difficulty getting housed, difficulty staying housed, income barriers, and mental health. Unfortunately, since the summer of 2020, when Emily and I started our new positions, it is becoming more and more difficult to get our clients housed. Some of this might be contributed to COVID, but in the area, rents are getting much higher as are amounts due for security deposits. We are seeing more and more landlords starting to charge application fees, sometimes as high as $100. Some of our clients have no income at all because holding down a job is very difficult, the barriers they face. $1 is a lot of money for somebody who doesn't have any. Some of our clients do have income from SSI, SSDI, but that's almost, especially with SSI, that's almost never enough to afford an apartment here on the common market. Now we do have the coordinated entry system, but the time it takes to get pulled for housing is often very unpredictable. I've seen clients wait a very short time, and I've seen other clients take a few months, several months even, to be honest. When a client gets pulled from the coordinated entry system, we are seeing landlords who were once willing to work with our housing case managers, more reluctant to work with our housing case managers. There is Section 8 housing available in the area, but again, the wait time for these apartments can be quite long. Also, in Section 8 housing, another important point to bring up is that they take their criminal and rental history into account. That's another barrier our clients face. One thing I'm seeing as I'm working with clients who are getting into housing, one of the big initial challenges they face is isolation. Given their mental health, this is an especially large hurdle, and I'm really seeing clients struggle with re-socialization. What I mean by that is when clients move into their own apartments, they have a hard time leaving the social groups they have associated with for so long. Going through a traumatic experience, such as homelessness together, they form a tight bond. And we see clients who have been recently housed spending time with their friends who are still actively using drugs and alcohol. We also find that clients who are have especially difficult mental health symptoms have a very hard time living alone. Another challenge we face out in the street is, as a case manager, is trying to keep current on where my clients are. Many of our clients I work with tend to move around a lot within the city and outside of it. And our clients stay elusive for quite a few reasons. Police often ticket our clients who sleep in the park, so our clients will flee that area. Clients often predate on each other, unfortunately, especially through theft. So clients sometimes stay scattered to keep them themselves and keep their belongings and themselves safe from each other. When living like a harsh day-to-day survival existence, it can be hard to remember that important interview or appointment. After speaking some of the challenges that are the many challenges our clients face, it's important to talk about our clients' successes. And Emily, I'm going to have you move on to a happier topic.
Thank you, Ben. If my PowerPoint will, it was working a second ago, but now it just doesn't like me again. All right. Okay, so we're going to talk about client successes, which is a little more positive than challenges that we have. We often have to look at our successes as stepping stones. They don't, there we go. All right, so how do we define success as a street outreach team? It's going to look a lot different in the outreach world as it does in a lot of other places in Pillars, or as something that you maybe would define as success in your personal life. Our outreach clients are often significantly more vulnerable than clients in shelter just by the nature of their living situation. So we have to take all of this into consideration when we talk about success. What does success look like? What is a successful client staff interaction? In outreach, success is about stepping stones. It's a good day for us, for Ben and I and Betsy and the Resource Center team, when an outreach client picks up their medication, goes to their doctor's appointment with their psychiatrist, or when they get into shelter. That is a huge win in our book. When they've been resistant to shelter and they finally decide to get on the wait list. When they have a day of sobriety, things like that. So when they add a day of sobriety, when they get into shelter, when they do all of these little things that are getting them towards the bigger goal of what is getting housed. That is the goal that we conventionally consider as successful, but not what we are necessarily working towards every single day. Like I said, the little things add up, and those little things, like picking up their medication, going to treatment, deciding to do their AODA assessment, is all going to lead to the bigger picture of being successful in the long run. But these little things can also be the most challenging things to make happen. Often to someone who's resistant to healthcare treatment, that is, doesn't trust the healthcare system or doesn't trust shelter. So this is why that's most difficult, which is why we work every day to gain their trust, and to gain the wins that we do. The small victories, like Ben talked about earlier, the small victories are just as important as the big ones. And it's really important that we make sure our clients know this, that they have trust in us, and they can celebrate, going to get their medications just as much as they can if they got housed. This keeps them going. It keeps us going. It keeps them wanting to come back to us. Like Ben said, come back to his office, come back into the resource center, even just talk to us out on the street. Those are the little things that they just add up. All right. So now we're going to talk about a little bit about our success stories. Ben's going to go first and talk about just a client that he's had that, really has made a lot of progress in the last year, and we'll go from there.
I'm gonna tell you guys about a client of mine, Dusty, who I'm especially proud of. He's made a lot of strides, and he really has risen to the top. Dusty has been a long-term client of Pillar Services. He lives with mental illness, cognitive delays, and learning disabilities. Dusty is a very kind and a very trusting individual. And he can also be very susceptible to feelings of loneliness and isolation. This often caused Dusty to seek out friendship with people who did not have his best interests at heart. And then Dusty was taken advantage of very frequently financially. Dusty is a client who might have been better served in a group home environment, but his care organization, and we see this quite a bit, did not feel he qualified for that level of care. He came back to the adult shelter in December 2014. I started working with him as his case manager at that time. He gained employment through the Goodwill Good Works program. I've had quite a few clients be successful in that program. Goodwill Good Works is an 8-week employment training program. Dusty did well at Goodwill. It wasn't without its bumps, but in the end, his supervisors were pleased enough with his performance that they hired him as a full part-time Goodwill employee. I'm happy to report that now in October of 2020, he's still employed there. Earlier this spring, we assessed Dusty's suitability for the single room occupancy program. The single room occupancy program is the short way to describe it is a little like a boarding house for people living with homelessness, and Bill Bundy is in charge. He does a great job over there. He provides guidance and case management services as well. Bill, God bless him, saw it fit to maybe give Dusty a shot over there. Dusty is actually the first client who moved into the new SRO on El Dorado Street. Dusty, it hasn't been without its struggles. Dusty still have some trouble navigating things, but all in all, his stay there has been successful so far. He's been able to meet new people and form healthier relationships. His ultimate goal in the SR program is to move into his own housing. Right now, he's saving money towards that goal. Right now, I'm going to let Emily tell you a little about somebody she's worked with extensively and has helped very much is Steve.
Hey, Ben, before we go to Emily and her story about Steve, could you tell us about SRO? What does that stand for? And
single room occupancy.
Thank you. And that means what?
Kind of how I described it. There's about 4 or 5 clients to a house. Each client gets a room, so it's a little like a boarding house. I believe rent is $300 a month with a $325 security deposit, and they must have an income of $1,000 or over.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ben. So the person I'm going to talk about is a client of ours. His name is Steve. He has been in our outreach program for about the last 6 months. Originally, when we met Steve, he denied being homeless, despite living in his van. He didn't want our help. He didn't want to talk to us. He didn't care he just wanted to be by himself. But after several contacts and gaining his trust, the outreach team learned that he did not have access to housing, medical care, food share, or any sort of income at all. He had been selling his belongings in order to get income for things like fuel and food. And we learned that he was in fact homeless. In talking to Steve, you'll learn that he is a very fulfilled man. He is well-traveled, having visited more countries than I'll probably ever get to in my life, and has backpacked and hiked most of South America's tallest mountains when he was younger. He has great stories about the 70s and 80s, the travels that he's had. He's always laughing, smiling, and telling you another story from when he'll call his glory days. But through active participation by both Steve and outreach, we were able to get him connected to Social Security in order to secure an income, which is obviously huge. Like Ben said, $1 is a lot to people who have no dollars. We were able to get him access to food share so that he could buy groceries and he could stop selling his things in order to afford food. And access to health insurance and medical care. The medical care was especially important to Steve because when we met him, he had multiple wounds on his legs and feet that had not been seen by a doctor, and that needed to be addressed really, right then and there. He had also been diagnosed with diabetes years prior, and he had not been on medication or insulin or anything for his diabetes. So now he is fully covered by health insurance, and it has been seeing a doctor that has been navigating all of his concerns with his diabetes, his wound care for his feet and legs, and all the other concerns that he's been having. And now that he has an income, we anticipate that he will get housing fairly soon, and that he is going to, make it out of this period of homelessness that he's in. So these are just some of the wins that we've had. These are, this has been the most recent with Steve. with Dusty, that's just been, you know, a really great story for him to tell. And we have a lot of tough days, but we also have a lot of really good days as the street outreach team. And with that, we would like to open it to any questions that you guys might have.
Emily, would you like to stop sharing your screen? Then we'll be
I
able
would love to stop
to
sharing.
see faces, see those
There
people
we
who
go.
are leaning in. I know Matt from our team has been monitoring the chat. And Matt, are there questions that folks have chatted in that are specific to street outreach? I know there were questions that were pillars related more generally, but I want to stay focused for the time being on street outreach.
Yeah, we actually just got a question come in, actually from Christine. How do you stay safe while doing outreach?
So a few ways one way that we stay safe is we never go alone. Ben and I always go with a partner. So it'll always be me and Ben, me and Betsy, Ben and Betsy. Someone who works at the resource center will often go with one of us when we are going to places like under bridges, parks, stuff like that, into the woods, parking lots. We never go alone, and I think that's it's our biggest safety net that we have.
I have a question for Emily and Ben. Why did you choose this work? This is hard work.
Well, I chose this work because I'm really passionate about serving, you know, underserved communities, and I saw that there was a need for people who are unsheltered. I think that a lot of, you know, we focus a lot on people who are in shelter, which is great. They need that help as well, but everyone is deserving of the services that Pillars offers, and I think that a big reason why I do what I do is to make people understand that they're worth the help that we have. I think that's like Betsy said in her introduction, that's one of the biggest hurdles that we face. And so I think convincing people that they're worthy of the help that we offer is what I want to do. And I want to connect them to those resources and make sure that they're connected in the best way possible, and help them overcome either their mental health or addiction in order to connect them to those resources.
Ben, anything to add?
Gosh, Emily just put it so well. You know, I echo a lot of her sentiments. I mean, part of the reason I'm in this work is because it's literally in my DNA. My aunt on my mother's side was a longtime social worker in New York City, and my mother was also a longtime social worker. So I have that wonderful example to follow. So why I started this business, like I mentioned, I started working with adults and teenagers with cognitive delays, special needs, if you will, and I really enjoyed that. An internship opportunity came up at the Fox Valley Warming Shelter, and I figured I hadn't worked with this population at all, and I thought it might be a very interesting experience, and I fell in love with it. What else can I say? I mean, you have to love this work to stick with it, and the people. It's the people. The people are the reason I stick with this work, because you know, I've met some of the most genuine and kind and tough, persistent people that I've met in my life out here on these streets of Appleton. And I think that sums it up.
Thank you. Matt, I've seen some other things come in. What do you have?
How do you guys maintain contact with clients, especially those that don't have cell phones?
Well, that is a big most of our clients, I would say, either don't have cell phones or are constantly getting new cell phone numbers. Lose their phone gets stolen, they get a new one, they have a new number. How we stay in contact is we literally go find them. If we haven't heard from someone in a while, or we haven't seen someone in a while, we say, where do they hang out most often? Are they usually in the park? Are they usually under the bridge? Let's go. So that's how we find them, honestly.
We also encourage people to utilize the resource center. Now, for a person not to have a phone, we allow people to check into the resource center for getting into shelter, the adult shelter. And a lot of people have gotten into shelter that way, just by coming by and checking in each day. So we do go out and find people, but we also let them know that we are here at the resource center Monday through Friday, ready and willing to help.
So we're also getting some questions about ways that the community can help, whether they're seeing somebody regularly that's experiencing homelessness, or want to help our organization more. So what are some ways that people in the community can deal with a situation when they see somebody on the street? What should they do? Who should they call? And how can they help Pillars?
They should call us. That's what we're here for. So if you called the Pillars line, 920-734-9192, and switch over to the resource center, you would connect with someone here and ask for Betsy, Emily, or Ben, and we're happy to help, and the community does that. And we have actually dropped our cards off and put posters in businesses and worked with the community as much as we can. So we want to be that. We're not here 24 hours a day, so sometimes we can't just drop everything and run out there, but many times we get a call from a business or the Appleton Police Department, and we say, there's someone here, we're worried about them, we don't know who it is. Usually we know them. So when we go there, even if someone is upset, that's a great way for us to, because we have a relationship many times, we're able to calm the situation down, sometimes bring them back to the resource center, get them a cup of coffee, figure out what's going on. Or again, sometimes we don't know them, and this is a person that we have yet to connect with, so that we're thrilled with that as well. So that's what we're here for. Use us, and we're happy to do that. The Fox River Mall called us, or we went out to the Fox River Mall and worked with them a little bit, giving them a bunch of information, and we're hoping that they reach out to us, because some of our clients have been going there during the day. And so we want to be aware of that. We want to be, we want people to know how to connect us to our clients. So we're here.
I saw a question about whether you encounter folks who are who don't speak English, or who are non-native English speakers. And Spanish in particular was the language brought up. How do you handle that when you run into it, or do you run into it?
We don't run into it.
Okay, go ahead. Go ahead, Betsy. I've run into it more at the shelter than I do out in the street. And it can be a very difficult situation. Go ahead, Betsy.
We do have access to translators if necessary, and we have used that from time to time. Typically, the most recent wasn't language barriers. It was a person who was deaf, and we had someone come in and meet with them and help us work with that person. That would be a great example. So we do have some funds set aside to help us with translators. It doesn't happen often. This isn't something that we deal with often, but when it happens, we do the best we can at the time, and then we work through that. It's just like all of our other clients, we're working to get people to trust us, so that might take a little longer when there's a language barrier.
And somewhat related, there have been a couple of questions about whether we encounter immigrants and whether we partner with World Relief in serving our clients and in housing folks who are new to the country. Do you street outreach folks have comments about that? Or I think Martha Baldwin, our crisis housing director, is also on the Zoom. Anyone have comments about that?
Personally, I haven't encountered many situations encountering with people from other countries. I'll let other people answer too.
We have very few people that.
Can you guys hear me
aren't-
okay?
Emily had started speaking, Martha, so we'll let Emily chime in, and I think that was you I heard, so you can go after Emily finishes.
Sorry, Martha. I was just saying that we have very few people who aren't familiar with the Appleton area or the Fox cities in general in street outreach. So if they are from another country, they've been here for a while and they know the Fox City well, at the very least. Martha, go ahead.
Okay, I'm sorry, my connection might not be good. So somebody
It's
tell me
not
if it's
good,
not
Martha,
working, but,
and
I
you are
actually-
breaking up. You are breaking up a little bit, and I see that you've put in the chat that World Relief will be working closely with Afghan and other refugees. So I take that to mean that, Martha, you are in touch with World Relief and aware of the work that they're doing. And if you have anything else to add, Martha, I guess I'd recommend the chat, given the connection.
Also, I think that we'd be more than willing to help and work. We don't on a daily basis run into people who aren't from the community typically. But if and when we do, we would be more than willing to work with people and help connect them to services.
I want to ask what some misperceptions are about what the street outreach role is. Any of you have thoughts on that? Like, are there things you find folks in the community expect that you do that you don't understand to be part of your role?
I think sometimes there's a misconception on how long the process takes from initial meeting to housing. I think there are some misconceptions that this is a quick process and you'd hate to disappoint people, but it usually is a very long process and it takes a lot of patience and persistence on both the client themselves and on the people working with them.
That's exactly right. So somebody may call us, as I said, and hey, there's a gentleman or there's a person under the bridge that might need some help, and we go there and see what they need. Bring a bottled water. You know, do you have a safe place? Maybe hook them up with shelter, maybe not, depending on what they want, and make sure they're okay. And then that's a connection, and we leave. And I think that someone might be like, well, what are you doing? I thought you were going to help him. But that's helping. We have to take things slow. We can't go in and force someone to leave and force someone to go into shelter or force someone to go into. Those things take time and patience, and so sometimes just a 5-minute conversation and a bottled water is a good connection for us. And trust me, we would love it if we were able to just fix that problem and help this person immediately, but it just takes time, as Ben said.
I think one thing I want to point out, I think community members sometimes get upset when they see the same client on the street over and over again, but there are clients out there who do not want the help. They would, for whatever reason, usually it's just serious and deep mental health issues. They don't want connection with us. If we try to approach them, they'll walk away or signify that I really don't want or need your help. And then this does happen.
I see a question, do you help those who live in their cars? And I think you touched on it, but go ahead and add what you will to that.
We do. Like I talked about with Steve, he lives in his vehicle, and we do just the same for people who live in their cars or vehicles, or as we do for people who are living under bridges, in the woods, places that are a little more temporary than cars. But people who do live in their cars have a little bit more sheltered, obviously, with a physical roof over their head when it rains. It's not as big of a deal when it gets cold. It's not that it's not a big deal, but they have that semblance of a shelter. So we do the same for people who live in their vehicles, as long as they want the help. Like I talked about with Steve, at the beginning, he didn't want to work with us, but we do help people who live in their vehicles. Yeah.
A good example of just like when we say we usually know where certain people are hanging out, the same is with vehicles. Well, we usually know where Steve parks, or we usually know where certain people park. A great story, just quickly, there was a woman named Sue, and the first, I bet 5 or 6 times we saw her, because we'd go real early in the morning to parking lots and see if someone's sleeping in their car. We knock on the window. That's intimidating for people, and that they roll the window down a little bit, and we say, "Hi, this is Pillars. I'm Betsy," and give them our card. And, "Oh, I'm not homeless. I'm okay." I'm like, "Oh, that's okay. You're not in any trouble here. We're here to help. And if you need anything, or if you want to come to the resource center, or you want to get hooked up with shelter, we're here." And that's how you get a hold of us. And then we stop in again the next week or the next day. And so this woman denied being homeless and didn't need any help for weeks. And one day I was at Walmart. I ran to Walmart for some supplies. So it was during the day. It wasn't an early morning stop. And I parked and I saw her, and she was in her car and the window was down. And I walked, just a little bit by her, and she said, "Hi, Betsy." And I said, "Hi." I said, "I think this is the day." And she said, "It might be." And I said, "I think this is the day you come to the resource center and we get you hooked up with shelter." And her hesitation was, "Well, that's not me. I don't belong in a shelter. I'm not." But she did. She needed that. She needed that right now. And so that day she said, are you going to be at the resource center?" I said, "I sure am. I sure am. I was just picking up supplies and I'm heading back there." So she came to the resource center. She got hooked up with shelter, and she got put into our shelter program. And that is a win. That is a win, because she needed that. And now she's working with case management and moving on. But that process took weeks.
Thanks, Betsy. We have a few questions left, and what the promise I want to make is that if we don't get to your question, what we will do is look through the chat and try to respond to you individually by email. We have all of your email addresses from when you registered, but we have a number of community partners on with us today, including Hope Clinic. And there was a question about health providers and insurance for people who are unsheltered. What health providers and insurance are they qualified for, and do we utilize the Hope Clinic?
The Hope Clinic is available. It doesn't go off of anything other than income. So if you're at 300% of federal poverty or less, we qualify to help. We do have a PTSD trauma counselor on site 2 days a week, and a counselor 4 days a week. So we are available.
So that's great information, and we certainly do collaborate with resources throughout the community. And I personally have told people about your clinic in the past, so that is something that we do utilize. It's a great reminder, and it's a great thing to use everybody, because this is a community issue. So thanks for coming on today.
Yeah, we do also have a new care navigation program that we just rolled out. So we're working through that, but that's another thing that we started.
I missed that. You have a new what kind of program?
Care navigation, similar to what you guys do, where we work with our patients or people that are referred in through a different route to help them, again, find those resources in the community to help them with rent, utilities, those types of things.
That's awesome.
Boy, we are coming close to the end of our time here. A question from Donna: how many success stories, like the examples given, would you say we have since the beginning of the year? Is there any way that you could speculate about that, Betsy or Emily, Ben?
So there's no way, I don't think, that we could give a number. I see Ben shaking his head. Like we talked about with the successes, I consider there to be a success in every single day. I mean, it's a success when someone goes to shelter. I could tell plenty of stories like Betsy told about clients who we see every single day that don't want to talk to us, don't want to engage, and then one day, you know, we've had enough contacts for them to be trustful of us, and they go to shelter, or someone goes to Walgreens to pick up their prescriptions, or someone goes to their psychiatrist appointment. I think all of those successes are just as important as our successes with Steve and Dusty, and getting Dusty into the SRO program and getting Steve income through Social Security. Those are some big wins, but we have little wins every day. So I think we could, however many days there have been in the year, that's like how many we've had, how many successful days.
Thanks, Emily. As we are coming right up on 8:30, and I know some of you will have to jump right to another meeting. So but if you're able to stay, because I want to answer Sarah's question about advice for when someone asks for money on the street. But I want to tip my hat. If I had a Pillars cap, I would tip that literally to some of our partners who are on the call. We've got folks from the city of Appleton. We've got folks from Mission Hope House out in New London. We've got Mosaic out of Gamey County, United Way. So just thanks to all of you who are part of this work, who help make all of this happen. And I advocate too. I skipped advocate. What should we do if someone unsheltered asks for money? How might we respond? Who wants to field that one?
Hi, I think I would respond, and what I do if I encounter that someone I don't know, and I say, are you working with Pillars? And do you know about Pillars? And do you know that there's a resource center during the day that you can go to and get hooked up to services? And I think that's the best way to help someone in that situation. If they're homeless, if they need things, we have food, we have blankets, we have water, we have the basic essentials that they need, as well as shelter. And so that's a better way to connect with someone. I would never discourage someone from giving a person money if they asked. However, I'm usually concerned with that money not going toward things that are really a positive step in their life, and usually it goes to one of the crutches that they're using to get through things, like drugs and alcohol. So I think that information is power, and so knowing where to help people or how to help people, I typically would give someone supplies or food before I would give them money. I always think we are, $10 to someone who is standing on the street, or $10 to an organization similar to Pillars, right, where we are for sure using that in a way to support someone. I think that is something to consider.
I'd add another thing you consider: if you want to respond to that person with a smile and eye contact and treat them like a human, that's a nice thing to do. And if you wanted to get involved, not necessarily as a donor, but as a volunteer, to know that you are already helping people experiencing homelessness, that also is a great way to be able to feel comfortable and alleviate that personal anxiety you feel in that situation. And Sarah, I should have mentioned Valley Transit as a partner too. Valley Transit is somebody that we work with and collaborate with as well. So we are at 8:32. This has been a great conversation. I hope you agree. We've really appreciated having all of you here. I am going to share one more thing quickly on screen just to give you a little bit more information to walk away with. Hang on. Well, I'm just going to leave it at that. I can't find the right place to click. So we are on social media. You can find more information, follow along. We share a fair bit of information about street outreach on our social media, including the time that Betsy and Emily encountered a deer in a local park. There's a cute little video on social media if you're interested in that. Our next conversations over coffee will be February 3rd. So we take a break in December, as I mentioned, and February 3rd, 7:30 to 8:30 will be the next opportunity to gather in this way and to learn more about pillars. There was a question I'm remembering in the chat about COTS, and Laura, I think we'll field that one by email. I think why isn't COTS part of pillars was the question, and I don't think I have a simple answer to that. If anyone on Zoom does and wants to field that one now, go for it, and if not, we will respond by email. I'm going to pause. Anyone want to field it? Okay, we'll be in touch. Again, feel free to follow up with me. I'm going to put my email in the chat now. If you have other questions that are lingering after we depart today. But I just want to thank you for your presence, and I hope you'll all join me, with silent applause or the reaction to thank Emily and Ben and Betsy for the truly heroic work that they do day in and day out to serve the community. Thanks so much. Thanks for being part of our team. All right, take care, everybody. See you around.